Welcome to the Heart for God podcast. With many years of experience pastoring and helping to start churches, Dr. Jim Townsley has some practical and biblical advice that can be a great help to you and your ministry. On this podcast, Dr. Townsley and other guests with special expertise cover a variety of topics. His goal is to help you lead your church to be a healthy, strong, and balanced ministry, and for your family to be happy, healthy, and living for the Lord.
Welcome to the broadcast today. Thank you for joining me. Recently I was traveling with young people from our ensemble. We were going to different churches or singing, and I've traveling with young people, I found out that I don't laugh that much. This group, they giggle, they laugh, and they don't stop. 11 o'clock at night, they're still doing it. 7 o'clock in the morning, they're still doing it, and that's certainly a joy and pleasure. As preachers, sometimes we get so serious that it's hard to laugh and enjoy life, but doing some with children, children, grandchildren, babies, doing some with the teenagers, it can help you become a little bit young again. But as they were talking, they're discussing this. One guy said, well, I drink, I think it was Coke. He drank four times a week. He was drinking a soda or Coke. He bought at a fountain. But they're describing how some of these drinks are like $4 a piece. And I said, you should just, instead of doing that, you should invest it in Coke. Don't, think of what that would do. And that got us thinking. And there's an app that, and you can find, there's a website. You can go to Nerd Wallet, NERDWALLET, Nerd Wallet. And this is an interest calculator, compound interest calculator. They have a lot of things on there, but look that up, compound interest calculator. So if I bought these things at Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts, these special drinks, it could be $4. It could be even more than that. But if you did that 4 times a week, that's $832 a year. So they're looking us up while we're driving in the van. And if they're 20 years old, they got 45 years to reach 65. Now they could continue to invest after that, which certainly it adds up even more. And if you put that money in the S&P 500, SPY, the average rate of return, though there's no guarantee of the future, but for decades, the average rate of return is 10%. And if it's compounded monthly, and if every year you contribute another $832, you do that every year, just that amount of what you would spend on non-necessities, but this is a small amount of money. And if you think about it, it's not going to be $832 20 years from now. If you use the rule of 72, you take the interest rate and divide that into 72. So it's going to double if you take, say with inflation at 3%, it's going to double every 24 years. So that same thing is going to be $1,600 a year in 24 years. Well, if you do this, if you do the math and you contribute the initial deposit, $832, and then you add monthly, and we're going to use the number 1,664, which would be double, although it won't be at first, but it's going to be more than that. It'll double twice in that 45 years. So if you add that much annually, this is the contribution, and you don't do anything else, just think, how much money would that be? So we're in the van, we're talking about this, everybody's guessing. It's just about $1.5 million Now, the point being, it doesn't take a lot to provide some sort of retirement or investment income that you can use for any variety of reasons. Now, in the ministry, our goal is not to be wealthy. In fact, as a pastor, we're clearly not to be greedy of filthy lucre. But on the other side of the coin, we are to be good stewards. And with such simple planning, and by the way, you don't have to give up soft drinks or coffee or, you can find that money from either that or other means. It's a small amount of money that if you do $10 to $20 a week, I would think there's a way to come up with that kind of money. And to think the result over time, the key is doing it early. But you see, if you wait till you're 60 and you do this instead of 45 years, you got 5 years, it comes up to $11,000. So, when you start at age 60 and you're going to retire at 65, that doesn't make sense. But let's assume it's not 45 years because you don't retire till you're 70, which is likely if you retire at all. But if you add that other 5 years, you're almost $2.5 million. The amazing thing about compounding interest is over time it's exponential growth because everything doubles. If you take the rate of return 10%, and take that into the rule 72, that's every 7.2 years it doubles. So when you start doubling $1 million, it's $2 million. You double $2 million is $4 million. Length of time is the key. And the truth is, it's so simple, it's so easy, but people do not think about it, they don't plan ahead. And so it was kind of a fun exercise, and it was eye-opening to a lot of young people. But you have to realize even those small purchases of gum, a candy bar, even a sandwich you don't really need, even those little things, if you just gave up a little and saw the value and purpose. Now, why is that important? Well, first of all, you'll probably have Social Security. And Social Security, we don't know what the future is going to be. I see no way for it to be gone completely, but there's not enough labor force to sustain the way that it works. So if you would not be able to count on that alone, so you have to save some money to be able to exist. And, you may start getting at 65, maybe 70, and may even be older than that in the future. So you may have 15, 20 years or perhaps more that you've got to live, and you may not have income. Now you say, I don't think I'll ever retire. And you may not, but you don't know that. You may not be able. And sometimes pastors hold on too long, and because of that, the church goes down, but they have no other source of income. And if a church does not plan for retirement, if the pastor does not plan for retirement, you're pretty much homeless if you leave the church and have no income. So this is wise stewardship, and it's so simple. It's not something that, you say, I couldn't do it, I don't have the money to do it. You could come up with that amount of money, $4 3 or 4 times a week. That would not be that hard. And you can put the money in what's called a Roth IRA, ROTH, Roth IRA, Individual Retirement Account. And you put that money in that Roth IRA, and it grows tax-free. You don't have any tax on it. And you may in that Roth have interest, dividends, and if it's in a regular IRA, it would grow tax-free, but when you take it out, it's all taxable income. In a Roth, it's not. And as you're under 50, you can put $7,000 into that Roth. So you take that money and put it in your Roth, and your wife can put in the same amount, $7,000. And let's just, for example, I got this open in front of me. Let's say you do that. So that's $14,000 a year. $14,000 a year. And we'll say you've got 40 years to grow. So you start at 25, you're 65. And the estimated amount of return. And you do that 14,000 every year annually. So just take a guess without looking or thinking too hard. What would that be? If you put in the maximum amount in that Roth IRA, you've got almost $8 million in income. And you're taking that out tax-free. If you take it out of a 401k, if you're working a business, they may have set up a 401k, which is similar, although you can add more money in a 401k or a 403b. There's a 403b7 for community type jobs, and there's 403b9 for pastors. There are different things that you can do, but the basic understanding, if you just put it in a Roth, it grows tax-free, and you take that money out, you're not paying any tax on it when you take it out. Now let's assume that you do that. You max it out. If somebody had enough income, they could do that. And you end up with $8 million. Well, what do you do with $8 million? Well, let's say you're making still 10% on it. Well, 10% would be $800,000 a year of income. What are you going to do with $800,000 of income? You can't spend that kind of money. You wouldn't want to. But you can give that money away. You can support missionaries. Now, here's someone that has probably had a fairly modest income, and yet they've worked hard, they've saved, and they reach the age of 65. They can pass that money on to their family. They can take a trip with their family. You can take your grandchildren to Israel, pay for everybody, and it wouldn't even touch the total amount that you have. And it continues to grow at that rate. I mean, that is not that difficult. Now, that's not necessarily what you need to do, but I'm just showing you that you can do something. And probably, if you're a young person, you're going to need a nest egg of $3 or $4 million. If you don't, say you had even $1 million, well, if you take $1 million and if you get a conservative, go on the opposite side, you do something conservative, and you get a 4% rate of return, that's $40,000 a year. In 40 years, that's not going to be enough. So we can take away the principal. But if you start taking away the principal, it may last 5 or 10 years, and then it's all gone. So if you are looking ahead in that many years, probably minimum, you'll need $3 or $4 million. So if you work backwards, say, how do I get $3 or $4 million? Here's what I have to save every year. And, just giving up 3 or 4 drinks a week, that could get you to $1.5 million. It wouldn't be that much harder to do that much more. In most cases, maybe you can't do as much when you're 20 or 25, but as you get older, you keep increasing that, putting more in. So I just think it's really an interesting thing to look at that, and you can play with it. Again, it's Nerd Wallet, and it's a compound interest calculator, and you can put in your initial deposit, whatever that is, and the years of growth that you have, the estimated rate of return. If you put it in the Dow Jones Industrial, it's about 7%, but there's also dividends in that. If you put it in the QQQ, the NASDAQ 100, the average rate of return is 13%. You compound it frequency as a month, and then how much you add every year. And then if you hit calculate, that'll tell you, is that going to get me where I need to be? Well, that's kind of a fun exercise. I hope you try that out and check it out. And I hope you have a good day.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the podcast, consider sharing it with a friend You can also follow at Dr. Townsley on Twitter or on Facebook at Jim Townsley.